Welcome to the podcast, Entrepreneur Perspectives, building and protecting your business one podcast at a time, a CASSource family production. In this episode, we discuss doing what you love, living what you teach, and growing through physical experiences. Our guest today is Nate Bailey. Nate is an author, a renowned coach, and a speaker who knows how to impact and reach an audience. Nate is a lead trainer and lead coach inside of the Prosperity Revolution. He recently fulfilled his longtime dream of selling his insurance agency to become a full-time coach. He currently lives in Rochester, Minnesota with his wife and 3 kids. Nate was a lieutenant serving our country in the United States Army. With experience as a platoon leader during Operation Iraqi Freedom, he provides advice we all need, and he has a simple philosophy on life: live what you teach. With Nate's compelling stories from the business world to his days fighting for our country, you can imagine our excitement to share Nate's story with you. Let's bring him in, Nate Bailey. Nate, welcome to the Entrepreneur Perspectives podcast. It is great to have you today.
Hey, great. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Nate, I want to hop into something real quick. We have an insurance business, and a lot of our clients on the insurance side are obviously in the insurance business. Tell us the quick story of something that's happened in this past year of you selling your insurance agency to then go on and do what you really love doing.
Yeah, so I really fell into the insurance business, the insurance industry at a time of my life when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. And my property casualty agent at the time was looking to hire and grow. And so he offered me a job, and that's how I started my journey back in 2004. And then just along the way, realized that this just really wasn't, it was great. I liked it for the freedom that I had, for the flexibility that I had, the ability to, be there for my kids and be there for their programs or their events. And if I ever needed, if daycare was closed or something like that, just that flexibility to be able to have my own business and have a little bit of flexibility around my schedule was great. But I never really, truly enjoyed it, loved it. Didn't wake up, especially the last few years, kind of dreaded it, and knew I wanted to do something different. But just like anything, whenever you make a change, when I was thinking about selling the insurance agency and really going out and finding something that I wanted to do for a living and truly be passionate about it and actually be able to earn a good living at it, to replace what I had inside my insurance agency, it's a little scary, and it keeps a lot of people from making that decision and just staying stuck where they're at. And so I had the opportunity at the beginning of this year to really go after what it is that I love to do, which is coaching and speaking and writing. And I took the leap, sold my insurance agency in the beginning of February of this year, and haven't looked back.
I can understand that. So was this a
decision?
Yeah. Was this an ongoing thought process that you had where you started to realize that, hey, I'm dreading where I'm at right now, I have to make a change? Or was this like waking up one morning for you and saying, this has to happen and I'm going to go make this thing happen right now?
It was a little bit more of an ongoing thought process, kind of an ongoing piece of what else can I do to, back and forth to, I'm just going to make this work. I'm going to go at it. I'm going to put everything that I have into it. And then you kind of go back to, man, I just don't want to do this anymore. But, figuring out what that looked like for me. And until I could figure that out, but it seeps over, right? Because when you're not fully in something, people could tell and your clients start to notice, right? And that's no good either. So I was kind of stuck in that spot going back and forth, really, to answer your questions for probably the last 3 to 4 years.
Okay, right. And a lot of times on these journeys that you go on, being an entrepreneur is you have these thoughts in your head and you're kind of thinking through it and you're trying to make your current situation better, but realizing that you have to make a decision to move on to something new. It's not always that overnight success or overnight decision where you just realize, I got to make this move now. Maybe that's the end result, right? That last thing that you do is to put yourself over the edge, but you had thought about this for such a long time. And I would imagine with which I love, is you have a lot of, it's complicated, but you break it down to such a simplistic level, is you talk about living what you teach And I would imagine, based on all of your thought leadership that you have and everything that you've done with the military, that you came to a point where you had to live what you were teaching, what you were talking about to everyone, maybe it's your kids, or maybe it's you as a platoon leader and talking to everyone there. Tell me a little bit about that. Was that part of your process of saying, I have to make this move because this is truly what I believe in?
Yeah, once the decision was made up in my mind that I just couldn't do this any longer, and that I wanted to sell my agency and go full time to what I'm doing today, coaching and speaking. I made the decision and I moved. Like I had my agency sold literally in a day. It was one phone call. Like, it wasn't hard to sell the agency, especially if you're in the industry, if you're an independent agent or broker, and you have the ability to sell your agency. There are plenty of other agents out there that are looking to, because it's such a good investment, especially if you have a good book of business, to be able to get rid of that if you want. And so I was just being decisive. Clarity is power is one of the principles that we teach, and being clear on what you want, why it matters. And once I was crystal clear on what I wanted and why it mattered, it was an easy decision for me to make. It's definitely a big decision. It wasn't as easy as of a decision for my wife to,
right,
because she's a little bit more of the thinker, the planner, the processor, and I'm more of the execute and move once my mind's made up. So that's how it happened. And I mean, same thing in the Army, in the military, as a platoon leader. You have to make decisions, and you have to make them fast, and you have to make them with certainty, whether it is the best decision or not. I mean, you get in trouble when you can't make a decision and you wait too long, and then depending on what the stakes are, there could be some real consequences. So obviously in the situation, selling an insurance agency, the stakes aren't that high, but yet, the same principles apply.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think what you said, clarity is power, I think is important, because we do see a lot of indecision that's out there, and people are trying to become better decision makers, but it's not that easy. You had this experience of the stakes were very high and you had to make a decision. So it allowed you to, like you said before, you have an offer, you can make that deal, or you can carry on, you can overanalyze that deal and try to get, 10 more offers. And next thing you know, that original offer, which was the best offer, that also served your purpose of living what you teach and moving on and getting on to the next stage of your life, you had to make that decision right then and there, whereas a lot of people might not have done that. They might have carried this thing on, like I said, for let's see if I can get 10 more offers. Were there examples that you could tell us where you had decisions in Operation Iraqi Freedom or as a platoon leader where you had to make a decision, and it taught you later on in life to then help you sell this business? Like you said, completely different stakes at hand, right? But still important to learn from that. Do you have any stories that you could share with us on that?
Nothing specifically is coming to mind, other than, a lot of different training situations where we would be, you try and make the training as realistic as possible, right? Just like in athletics, you want to make the practices as game-like as the actual game itself. And, just learning from all those different experiences, because you don't always do it correctly the first time, right? I mean, you're going to make mistakes. You're not going to make the decision when you should have, and the real power is inside of learning from those situations and then applying that into your life moving forward. And so that's really what I did in that situation. I mean, you talked about maybe going out and getting 10 other offers from other agents, and I actually had not the same situation, but my broker called the day after I met with the guy that I sold my book of business to, and he basically gave me a little bit of a better deal. But initially I reached out to him first, and he really lowballed me, so I went and talked to this other guy. And so I had a decision to make there. I had agreed the day before with this agent to sell him my agency, and then the next day my broker came in and said, "Hey, we'll give you this," which was a better deal. But I had already given my word to the other guy that I was going to sell it to him, and that's what I did. And so there was a critical moment, a critical decision, and I think a lot of other people would have handled that differently. They would have taken the better offer on the table despite giving another man their word. And, there was a decision that I chose to go the opposite way, to stick to my word, to be a man of my word, and to stick to what I had agreed upon, even though we hadn't signed any contracts. It was a handshake. And so just being, like I said, just being decisive, being clear, being the man that you want to be. When I talk about, living what you preach, that was it. That was me living what I preach and teach all the time, is be a man of integrity, be a man of your word, and move swiftly, be okay with it, own it. So yeah, that's a scenario that happened in that situation.
Yeah, and you just saying that, living what you teach, I don't think we can just breeze by that, because you just did it, right? You lived in that moment where this is what you would tell someone else to do, right? And you did that exact same thing. So a lot of times you hear people, and again, we're making generalizations, of course. There's a lot of great people out there. We're not painting a picture that everyone's bad, but living what you teach, that they would not make that decision. They would teach one thing and then they would go out and do something different. And from what I've seen, your incredible social media presence and doing TEDx talks, that you're sharing this message. It's that important to you that, yeah, you could be a successful insurance agency owner, but at the same time, you can give so much more back to people when you get out in front of an audience and talk to them, and that is recorded and then it's put on YouTube and other social media channels, right? That you are now sharing the message of living what you teach. And not only that, you have the experience to back it up, to say, this is exactly what happened in my life. I got a better offer, but I knew that the right thing to do is what I've been telling other people to do. And that's what I did. And I took the first offer that I had, and I'd committed to it, and I was a man of my word for it. Is that something that you try to get across in a lot of your presentations that you're giving?
Yeah, 100%. The more that I get into this industry, the more people you meet, the more you realize that that's not as common as you would think, or as I would think. Yeah, we just did a large group event called Pro Rev Live, myself and my partner Satem and Ali, and back in April, and we had these event planners helping us run the events, and they run all kinds of different events for large, well-known speakers, and they were just blown away over the 3 days at how much, how real we were, as in the person on the stage, as we were behind the screen, right behind the stage. They just were blown away, and we were blown away that's not commonplace, that people are not the same on the stage as they are behind. And unfortunately, that's not the case. But so yeah, that's very important to us. We live what we teach, we live what we preach, and of course we're going to be the same on stage as we are behind. That's just who we are. And I think living that way and to impact the masses and generations to come, which is really our vision, is to do that, to be that genuine person. That's a comment that we'll get all the time, is just how they're just so genuine. He's just so genuine, or vulnerable, or real, and willing to put it all out there. And I think that's important, because people they resonate with that. And I just love, I was able to, inside of the insurance agency, the part that I loved the most was really the people and the relationships that I created. But what I'm doing now just allows me to truly do what I love and to reach more people while I do it. So I've just always been drawn towards that.
I could imagine, because when we saw your TEDx talk and we heard it, and we're thinking, who do we want to have on the podcast? We were talking about this beforehand. We can't just have anybody on the podcast. We want to have the right people, because we want our listeners and not only and ourselves to learn from this person, this individual that we're going to have this conversation with. And being genuine and being real about what you talk about, it just matters so much, because there's so much content out there. But what goes through, what makes its way through is the people that are being genuine, that are being real, that are telling that true story. And we listen to you or watch you on your TED Talk, you seem to be getting emotional while you're going through this process. So I could imagine for the audience, they're just taken back by it. And yeah, a good actor can get up and make themselves emotional, right? But this is real, right? You're telling true stories, and we can see it on YouTube. here's this guy, and like, man, you just take it in, right? I mean, you just take it in. You're like, wow, this is real. This is real life. This is really happening. This is what this is what you've done in your history. This is what you're doing right now, and you're preaching this, and that resonated with us. So I know if it resonates with us, it's going to resonate with others as well. And I don't think you're doing that on purpose.
No, other than, the only thing I'm doing on purpose is really trying to be as open and vulnerable as I can, and not worry about like what other people might think, because I realize that I've always been drawn to the people that are able to just be open and not let all the emotion out, right? Whatever it is, and not have anything about it. And that's the same thing. Like, in that talk, my wife was sitting in the audience, and of course, every time I'd look at her, it would open that up a little bit more, because it was so real, and because inside of the TED Talk was an experience that I did in this event called Seal Fit Kokoro, a 52+ hour event, no sleep, nonstop, extremely physical event. And the driver for me was it wasn't my wife, it was my kids, it was my family. So it definitely it's great to hear that you felt that even watching it, because it was real, very real.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine, because I have 3 kids as well, my wife, and you talk about your wife being the planner. She wants to look through things, and that's great balance to have, but it's also can be difficult because you're ready to like, let's go, let's make this thing happen. She's like, hold on, let's analyze this stuff, right? And then you have your 3 children, but then taking that all in and understanding all of those little journeys that you've gone on together and the overall journey that you're going on, and then to like be going through these conversations and to look in the crowd and see her, and you just said like it kept opening it up just a little bit more. I can't imagine how you can hold yourself together at that point. And we're certainly going to show that TEDx in the show notes so other people can see what we're talking about if they haven't yet seen it. I think it's an important piece for people to watch. And you just talked too about your this physical experience that you've gone through, and you've done many other ones. Of course, being in Operation Iraqi Freedom, just that alone is a physical experience to go through. And you talked about the training exercises that you had to do and make it as real as possible. I would imagine a lot of your training exercises could become more physically straining than the actual real thing, and that's what you're trying to get across. So tell us a little bit about some of the physical experiences that you're putting yourself through right now, or have done so recently.
Yeah, I've always been drawn towards really difficult physical things. I was super active, always into athletics and sports, and once I played college football, and then I went into the Army because I saw that as a physical challenge and a test to see if I had what it took. And then you get out, you get in the real world, and you take your foot off the gas pedal. You still think you're that 20-year-old college football player, but then you're 40 and you realize that I realized that I was fat and overweight and out of shape, and that I needed to do something about it. So there's just so many lessons that I learned. There's a lot of discipline that comes in that spilled over into all the other areas of my life by training for these big events. I just attempted a 100-mile race, solo run. I'm a big guy, 6'3", 230 pounds, and did not complete the 100-mile run, unfortunately, and that's another story, but I'm going back July 28th to do that. It's just, I'm committed. When I tell somebody I'm going to do something, you can count on it getting done. It didn't happen for that actual event, but I will complete a 100-mile run. I did an Ironman, which is a 2.4 mile swim, a 112-mile bike, and a marathon run. Did the Seal Fit Kokoro, which is a 52-hour event, and then I'm currently training on top of the 100-mile run to do another event similar to the Kokoro event called Go Ruck Selection, which is it's a 52 or 48+ hour event, and just extremely physically challenging. And why I do these things is, again, to push myself, to constantly give myself something to work towards. And also, I want to be the example for my kids. I want to show them what it's like to actually sign up for something, or to attempt something, or to set your sights on something big, and then to also see what it takes to actually put in the work necessary to go out and complete it. And because I know if I don't set the example for my kids, someone else will. And that scares the crap out of me, because if it's not me, I don't have control over it, because someone will be the example, and I most likely will not approve of that if I don't be the example for my kids.
Right.
And so that's the biggest reason I do this stuff.
And I'm glad you got into the why you did it, because I was going to ask that question. And then you even went deeper on it, because you talked about legacy, right? You've talked about your wife and your kids multiple times. Obviously, you have an incredible family, and you've referenced just looking at your wife in the audience and how that could open you up even more. But you talk about legacy a lot. You're doing these amazing things. You're constantly pushing yourself, and you're trying to be the one that's showing others, this is why I'm doing it, because if it's not me, I'm worried about who is going to lead the way. But tell us a little bit more about legacy. You've even written books about legacy and why legacy is so important. Obviously, that's probably also part of the decision-making process you have in February of this past year, when you said, I'm ready to go make this move, because you're not just doing it for what's the next best business move and where can you generate the most revenue. It's not only living what you teach, it's also just showing your family, your children, that this is how you should operate, this is how you should act, and living that. So talk to us a little bit about legacy and why it's so important to you.
Yeah, I don't know who said it, but pain is temporary, regret is forever, and I don't want to look back when I'm 70, 80, 90 years old and with a bunch of regret, because I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have spent more time with my kids and my family. I wish I would have had more experiences. I wish I would have sold my agency, when I thought about it for years and years, and instead of just staying stuck in it and not thinking that I could do anything different. So yeah, that's the biggest reason for me, is that legacy, to live it. The most recent book that you referenced, Live Your Legacy, is to not only build this great legacy that I could leave in all the big four areas of my life, for my family and for generations to come, but I want to also live it. I want to enjoy it and experience it along the way. It's all about the journey, right? I mean, that's, the older I get, the more I realize that it's just, life is really just more about the journey than it is the end line, because the end line can feel very empty. And, as I do these big events, we just biked across America to raise a bunch of money for some schools in Ethiopia. And there were 6 of us that rode across the country. And when we started in San Diego and arrived in Charleston, South Carolina. And when we got to Charleston, South Carolina, we dipped our tires in the ocean. It was like the realization that, like, we're done. We're going home, because it was just such a great journey, such a great experience. And then just that empty feeling of, all right, this is it. Like, everybody else is going to go on with their lives. And so just to live it, live your legacy, to enjoy it, to be conscious of it while you are building it.
Yeah, well, you just touched on 2 things that I totally agree with. One is you ended up in Charleston, South Carolina. I spent a lot of time there, went to college there, so it would be an incredible city to finish in. Yeah, I mean, I love Charleston, so I can imagine.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, that was the first time I've been there.
Getting to the coast there, yeah. But then you talked about the journey, and it is all about the journey. And it's funny, we wrote an article, I guess it's been a couple of years now, called Enjoy the Journey. And in it, we always talk about enjoying the journey, and we created the analogy in sports between, like, winning a championship. And we talked about all these incredible players that never won a championship. They never won a ring, a title, whatever you want to call it. But did they not enjoy the journey along the way? Of course not, right? I mean, of course they did, right? And it's no different in business, because there's, I don't know if it's studies or reports and just stories really of people that built incredible businesses, sold the business, and then committed suicide, right? Because they had this empty feeling inside, or maybe they didn't commit suicide, they just became miserable. Some people had excitement, and they can find the next thing they want to work on, right? You get the serial entrepreneur that just continues to build. I sell this business, kind of like you're doing, and you move on to the next thing. That is the journey, right? That is continuing the journey. But when you just stop and it's over, it's like, well, wait a second. But you have to enjoy it. You have to live that legacy. And no doubt we'll be buying that book. I'm excited to read it. I mean, just you talking about it here, it just resonates with me. And like I said before, I know if it resonates with me, there's a lot of other people that I talk to, it would resonate with them as well. So definitely wanted to hit on those 2 things real quick, as you brought up Charleston and enjoying the journey, because you are spot on. But to hear it, not from me and not from some other people, but from you and someone who's, defended our country. I mean, we're recording this on July 5th. Yesterday was July 4th. And we're talking about our amazing country that we have. And there's a lot of things going on in this world. There's a lot of things that's gone on in this world, when you were, defending the country. And it's just, it's amazing to us for even us to have the opportunity to even talk about these things, for us to be able to record this podcast and have you on it, and you get to tell your story about where you've been, what you're doing, where you're going, and your family. We appreciate the time you spend. We appreciate you defending our country and giving us the opportunity to even record this podcast, if you will. And so thank you very much for that. What I want to do now,
thank you.
Yeah, what I want to do now is go into a little bit more of a rapid fire approach, if you will. Hit some quick questions to you, and then we'll finish this thing off. So the first thing I want to do is, you've obviously been in insurance, but if I were to take you out of your current business right now, where you're not speaking, you're not writing, you're not coaching, what career would you be in?
Maybe coaching football or something like that. Coaching basketball. I've always enjoyed coaching and leading others, and those were two things I always thought I would do. To be a coach, especially a high-level coach inside of football or basketball, it's a ton of time away from my family, which is the only thing that I think always held me back. But that might be something, even when I get older, when I don't really have anything else going on and the kids out of the house, that I might go back to, because I love it so much.
Yeah, it's so funny too. When we ask this question, it always makes sense. The answer makes sense based on what they're doing. And yeah, the stakes are always different, right? If you're in the military versus leading a football team, they're different, but at the same point, they're all relative, right? And you having that thought process of thinking I could be a coach, it makes sense. So with coaching, you travel a lot, but you've traveled the world, right? You've seen it all. You've been in Charleston. You've gone across the entire country.
Yeah.
You've been overseas. If you were to pick one city to travel to that is your favorite city, what would that be?
Well, yeah, I've been to so many different places, and I kind of like them all.
Maybe you'll go back to Charleston, right?
But, currently, Charleston. No, honestly, Charleston is a place that I was like, I definitely want to spend some more time here, because when we got there, we didn't really have that much time. So it's definitely a place I would like to go back to. Currently, we do a lot of our coaching events in Southern California, Orange County, like Laguna Beach area. And that place is just beautiful and special. And so right now, that's probably kind of like, if I had to pick a number one, it's just there's something special about that area of the country.
Okay. So you've gotten, I believe you have 2 books, and so obviously you're going to recommend those 2 books. So you've talked about the legacy book, Living Your Legacy.
Yeah.
Real quick, and I'm going to ask you this question. What is the other book that you've written?
I believe it's called Leading a Legacy Lifestyle. I wrote that one a few years ago. So Leading a Legacy Lifestyle.
Okay. And so now, besides those 2 books, I'm sure you've read a lot. If you were to recommend one book to other entrepreneurs that they should read, what book would that be?
I read a lot. The one that's just in my mind, because I read it recently, is called Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. That was just a really good book. Great book, especially as an entrepreneur, and just to see the journey, again, that he took you through in that book, and how well he did it. It just resonates with me, and I'm sure it resonates with all business owners and entrepreneurs, because you can just, you realize that, you look at Nike today and they're this big, huge, mega company, but it wasn't always that way, right?
Right.
And so, Shoe Dog was a great one. The War of Art is another one I always talk about, Stephen Pressfield. That's a great read, quick read that I love.
Well, I knew it made sense to have you on this podcast, because Shoe Dog is, if it's not my favorite, it's one of my favorite books that I've ever read. And you explained it. It's just you just assume that it's just always been this way, and it was not that way. Maybe you have East Coast distribution when they're asking in Japan. He's like, yeah, of course we do, and it's like they didn't have anything of the sort, right? And it's just like you just have to figure things out and move forward and make it happen. There's no way around it. So it's a great book.
Yeah.
Social media. Social media is obviously huge. People use it personally. Obviously, we're talking about business here today. For your business, what is your favorite social media app today?
Well, I think right now it's Facebook. We drive most of our leads through Facebook, but definitely Instagram is kind of becoming more and more popular, and we're starting to shift some of our ads and marketing over that way too. So, but Facebook probably number one right now.
Okay. You're on a lot of podcasts. I'm assuming you listen to a lot of podcasts. If you do, what is your favorite podcast platform to use? Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, something else?
Yeah, it's primarily been Stitcher. I listen to, I don't know why, but iTunes also, but Stitcher's probably the number one podcast platform that I use.
Okay, so now we're going to get into good stuff. We talk about sports. You've mentioned it before. You played college football. You want to maybe one day lead a college football team or a football team. As a fan of sports, if I were going to give you for the rest of your life one sports team that you can root for, you can't root for anybody else, one sports team, what team would that be?
Yeah, it would be the Packers, the Green Bay Packers.
Okay.
Usually.
You grow up a Packer
I grew up
fan?
in Wisconsin.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a big Wisconsin guy. Yeah.
Aaron
We have
Rodgers.
season tickets for the Packers. And,
very cool.
And we go to 2 or 3 games. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they had a little bit unlucky last year, right? Rodgers got hurt. But I don't know. This year it seems to might be another year. I think if you have Rodgers, you have a chance, right?
Well, it makes you appreciate how important the quarterback position is, and then it really makes you appreciate when you have someone as great as Aaron, because when he's gone, it's just a completely different team, and you're like, wow,
yeah,
the guy is he just makes it look so easy. So,
it's interesting, and it was late in the season, and they were questioning whether or not Rodgers was going to come back. And Vegas, the spread would have changed 10 points if Rodgers played. And that's incredible.
Exactly.
I mean, there's no players. They might move the line a half a point for a key defensive end. 10 points was the line move that they were going to do. I think it was like versus the Bears or something. But so I'm a Buffalo Bills fan. So Jim Kelly was the last quarterback we had, and that was in the 1990s, and now it's 2018.
Yeah, right.
So I mean, you guys went from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, but before that, right? Before Favre was there.
I mean, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of Packer fans that don't remember like Randy Wright or Lynn Dickey or some of the other guys that we had before that, and they only know Favre and Rodgers, and so enjoy it while we have it.
That's right.
Sure.
So hopefully one day the Bills can get there too, and so I like rooting for the Packers because they have a great fan base, and it's a lot of fun, and people that really love the game of football and very pure. So, all right, so I'm sure you've had many moments like this. But if you could identify just one moment that stands out, comes to mind for you right now, when was the one moment you told yourself that you just need to make it happen and you gave yourself no excuses?
Yeah, the experience, the Seal Fit Kokoro experience, which was really kind of a base experience for that TED Talk you were talking about, was really not the only time, but one of the times where I really just went all in, because it was a big deal for me signing up for that. When I signed up, I would not have came anywhere close to finishing or even completing the standards to be able to see if I had what it took. And so that was a moment where I was like, I'm gonna do this, and it was huge. Like there was really no reason for me to sign up for it at the time that I did, and just was like, I'm going to do what's required. I'm going to do what I said I was going to do, and I'm going to show up and see if I have what it takes to finish this. So, and gave myself no excuses, like you said, and went in and did it, but did the work, leading into it that I needed to. I had to lose like 45 pounds, and that was no small effort in like 6 months. So, that's one of those moments.
Well, I could imagine what that's like, 45 pounds and to just make this stuff happen. And like I said before, I'm sure you've had many times in your life and will continue to put yourself in those situations where you just need to make it happen and make no excuses for yourself. And it's things to live by for your kids. And as you live your legacy and create your legacy, and give us an opportunity to chat with you for this small time, to be on our podcast. And like I said before, your service to this country. We appreciate everything. We appreciate your time and your stories. Nate, what is the best way people can get in touch with you? Because I'm sure after hearing this and then hopefully listening to your YouTube video and seeing some of the other great content that you're putting out there, what's the best way that people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, you bet. Best way is to go to my website, NateBaileySpeaks.com, and inside of that also has the links to all the different coaching programs and events that we do and put on. Check out that website, NateBaileySpeaks.com.
Awesome, Nate. Well, thank you again for spending time with us on this podcast. Would love to stay in touch with you some more, and best of luck to you on your journey and living your legacy.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Nate, it was absolutely awesome having you on this podcast. From your bravery in defending the United States of America to leading others to live their legacy, we know all entrepreneurs can follow and learn from you. The perspectives from Nate on his journey of building his own business and living what he teaches are now perspectives you as a business owner and entrepreneur can use for yourself. And for that, Nate, thank you. And for anyone looking to talk to Nate about his journey or to learn more about his coaching business, we encourage you to reach out to him. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. You can find me on LinkedIn or contact me on Twitter and Instagram at Eric_Kaz. Thank you for listening to our KazSource podcast, Entrepreneur Perspectives, building and protecting your business one podcast at a time. Until next time, we're out of here. This podcast exists in large part because of KazCM, the content marketing business inside KazSource Inc. KazCM is excited to bring the content marketing services used at KazSource to you. Learn more by visiting KazCM.com. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. It's a big deal to us. We hope you found value in it, and if you did, we would be incredibly grateful if you gave us a review on iTunes. Remember to subscribe to this podcast, and feel free to share it with anyone you know. More than anything, thank you again for listening. We appreciate it.